What is going on, guys? JayzTwoCents here, and I hope that you guys have had a great holiday season, and I hope that you guys have gotten all of the PC hardware goodness that maybe you were hoping Santa would leave under the tree. But if he didn't, or maybe you were on the naughty list, don't worry, I have a huge announcement coming up in the near future, so you don't want to miss that. Make sure you stay tuned. But today, we're going to be talking about EVGA's brand new GTX970 SSC. That stands for super clocked, for when one super just isn't super enough. With the new Silencio Performance Optimized fans, the Cooler Master Neptune 240M delivers the perfect balance of noise and performance. Click the link in the description to find out more. Now, the general public might find this particular product to be a little bit confusing because really on the surface it looks exactly like the GTX 970 SC, which EVGA already has and launched back in September. So it really might leave someone wondering, what's the extra S for? Well, guys, there's actually quite a few changes that have been put into this graphics card on EVGA's part, and some of it is due to direct feedback from the general public, consumers, and review forums. Now, the specs on the GTX 970 SSC is a 1190 megahertz base clock, a 1342 megahertz boost clock, and it has 6-phase power delivery, so that's what already makes this a little bit different over the standard SC. It also has an additional 33% power limit over the reference design, which means you can get higher voltage for your core. You can also get higher fan speeds without hitting that power limit, which means you can get better overclocks and better temperatures. But this one also features a dual BIOS switch. Now, really the only difference between the dual BIOS on this card is one has that factory default where the fans won't start turning until 60 degrees Celsius, which means you have a completely silent GPU when you're in idle or doing 2D things that don't get very hot on the GPU. And the other BIOS on this actually has a different power or fan curve. So really there's no difference when it comes to power delivery, like the GTX 980 Classified actually has different voltage limits and LN2 mode. But this does give you the ability to flash a custom BIOS to this without fear of bricking your card if you want to be a little bit on the wild side or maybe a little bit dangerous, but you can't actually brick this thing with the dual BIOS. So that's really nice. But this thing also features a completely redesigned internals of the cooler. Now, you guys may or may not know, when this card originally launched, there was a little bit of a controversy where some of the heat pipe, or the third heat pipe, didn't actually touch the heat spreader of the GPU, therefore making a pipe that really kind of wasn't doing a whole lot. And EVGA said this wasn't really an issue, but Reddit and other forums said, yeah, this is a pretty big issue, especially when you're dealing with other cards that are getting much cooler temperatures. So EVGA basically went back to the drawing board. They redesigned the cooler, and they also put on here a heat dissipation plate that goes on the MOSFETs as well as the RAM or the GRAM on here, or the VRAM, GRAM, whatever, VRAM on this card. And so it gives you much better cooler or temperatures, at least that's what they're advertising. Now, I wasn't gonna just take EVGA's word for it. As much as I do like them as a company, I want to see them, see the changes firsthand. So I went ahead and ripped this cooler open, and it does indeed have a very different design when it comes to the actual heat pipes. It has a copper plate on there now, which is evenly dissipating the heat to 3 8mm copper heat pipes that are straight heat pipes, which they're advertising are better for temperatures. Now, it does have a very massive heat sink that runs along the length of this thing, but as you can see, it does not have a backplate, which was a little bit confusing considering the pictures they put up did show a backplate, but I have a feeling there's gonna be a future announcement regarding that. Now, I do think a backplate on this would have made sense because, as you can see, there are 4 RAM modules on the back of this thing, which are not being cooled whatsoever. However, the other 4 RAM modules on the other side of the PCB are being touched by that plate on there, which is actually giving a little bit of dissipation to the cooling or to the heat for better cooling. So I would have liked to have seen them do that, considering now you are going to have some delta temperature differences between the RAM, especially if you start to overclock the RAM or it starts to overclock itself, as Maxwell does when it comes to VRAM and power target and power limit overhead. It will start to allocate that to the RAM and self-overclock where needed, where there's additional power. It's a great design, but I think we should not have delta temperatures between both sides of the RAM and both sides of the PCB. That's just me. You guys know how I feel about backplates. Doesn't have it. Anyway, this is a graphics card review, so enough talking about that stuff. Let's go ahead and stick this thing on the test bench, and let's just see how well it does. You guys can tell this video is not scripted today, is it? No, it's not. So you guys get all of the bloopers along with this video.
Transition.
So the GTX970 SSC, super clocked from EVGA. How did it perform? As you guys saw in the benchmarks, this thing is a killer when it comes to 1080p. It just massively destroys 1080p, even at ultra settings. All of my benchmarks, guys, are the max settings. We're talking max anti-aliasing, max depth of field, max everything. And as far as the sliders can go to the right, that's the way I do my test bench results when it comes to graphics cards, because I want to see exactly what they're capable of. So you guys know what the worst case scenario is when it comes to performance. You pull some of those sliders down, performance goes up. But the GTX 970, guys, I said it back when the series first launched in September that although the 980 is fun and it's super powerful, and having 3 of them in one rig is just so overkill for what I use it for, it's not even funny. The GTX 970 is still the clear winner when it comes to the Maxwell series because of the fact that it's so much performance, such low temperatures, such low wattage needed, and it's so much cheaper than the 980s. It really is the best bargain of the series as far as I'm concerned. Now, granted, we don't know what the 960 is going to bring when that launches, but right now the 970 coming in at under $400, giving you, nearly 780 Ti type performance and maxing the R9 290X in many tests and beating it in some, makes this card by far, as far as I'm concerned, the best future-proof card at the moment. Yeah, I said future-proof, but this card would last you easily 4 to 5 years as far as I'm concerned. Now, when it comes to the benchmarks, as you guys saw, it did a fantastic job even at 1440 and 4K. Now, 4K, yeah, we were seeing 30s and 40s on the FPS, but even the 980 classified was doing 30 and 40, 41 FPS. And this thing actually performed very near the 980 when it comes to 4K. So again, it's just an amazing job for the 970. Now, it's not the coolest cooler I've tested. That still belongs, that title still belongs to the Gigabyte G1 Gaming. But then again, that card has 3 fans, a much longer heatsink on this thing. But it doesn't feature the dual BIOS like this one does. And this one still came in at 70 FPS or 70 degrees Celsius max in a closed off room when I just let Valley Benchmark loop for an hour. 70 degrees Celsius max while overclocked to 1553 megahertz. Wow. I was also running the RAM at 8,000 megahertz. So yeah, this thing's pretty freaking awesome. And the dual BIOS is really cool. That way you guys could play around with switching up your BIOS or putting some custom BIOS on there, which are now on the market that you guys can find over at like overclock.net, and not have any risk of bricking your card. You can always recover it with that dual BIOS. So there you go. I think this thing is a fantastic card. All the 970s are as far as I'm concerned, but I'm really glad to see that EVGA addressed the public concern over the cooler, redesigned the way the base plate works on the die itself, as well as adding the heat spreader across the PCB, which are helping keep things nice and cool. Keep those VRMs cool, you can overclock farther. Keep the GPU cooler, you can overclock farther, and raising that thermal or that power limit also means you can run the fans harder, faster, keep things cooler, and not actually reduce your overclocks. So there you go, guys. GTX 970 super clocked. Not the super clock. That one actually comes out in the spring. Don't tell anybody. Now, you guys may have noticed on my desk in front of Skunkworks earlier in this video that I had this little mini fridge. No, I'm just kidding. This is actually my Node 304 from Fractal Design. And I built a mobile rendering PC in this that I'll be doing a video on very shortly on the channel, so you want to make sure you stick around for that. I've got a lot of hardware crammed into this little bitty case right here. and this is going to be going with me to CES that I'll be using to render the videos for you guys while I am there, at least some of them. Some of them will be rendered there, some will be rendered back here afterwards. But if you guys want to see what's in here and how it performs, make sure you guys stay tuned on the channel. Now, as always, if you guys want to interact with me, check me out on Twitter or Facebook. Those are the easiest platforms to get a hold of me. I really love interacting with you guys. You guys make doing this every single day so much fun. Hopefully you guys have a nice, safe New Year's holiday. And as always, guys, I hope to see you in the next one.